Welcome to Restaurant Deal Making Exposed, the only show that equips you with everything you need to know about restaurant transactions. In this show, we tell you all about how to make the sale or purchase of your restaurant not just possible, but successful. Now here are your hosts, ex-restaurateurs and seasoned brokers, Patrick Toda and Andy Mirabel.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Restaurant Deal Making Exposed. I'm Andy, I'm here with Patrick. We are your hosts today, and we're going to be tackling the issue of tariffs and the effect on our beloved restaurant industry. News is everywhere, and if you're watching or listening, the word of the year so far is tariff. Well, what is a tariff? And why would we decide to add to the media storm around tariffs by talking about them on Restaurant Deal Making Exposed? A tariff is a tax imposed by a government on goods imported from other countries, designed to increase the price of those goods and potentially protect domestic industries. There is no doubt that tariffs can and will have a large collateral impact on the restaurant industry if prices on imported goods rise, some of which are forecasted to rise a lot. The restaurant industry already has slim profit margins and has faced continued battles over the past many years that include the notorious pandemic, labor shortages, inflation, price increases due to past and current issues such as the avian flu, for example, and much more. So how can restaurants and bars keep weathering all of these storms? Well, frankly, most cannot, as there is always a ceiling for what the consumer will pay for goods and services. Given all of our beloved restaurant industry has to endure, should many of these products that are served in restaurants and bars be exempt from these tariffs? And if so, how could that be managed or implemented? Let's dive in and talk this through. Patrick, this is a very polarizing subject currently. And it's consuming the news, so it's everywhere. But I think it was nice that we kind of dove in and behind the scenes and said, gosh, this really is going to have a huge impact on our industry and our clients' businesses. So
potentially.
Yeah, potentially. What's your take on this?
Yeah, so can tariffs affect restaurants? Well, let's start. Increased food costs, supply chain disruption, higher equipment costs, reduced consumer spending, impact on alcohol and other beverages. What are potentially some positive impacts? I like to always have kind of the positive as well. Support for domestic suppliers, opportunity for creative menus, stronger local partnerships, and competitive advantages for some concepts that use like farm to table and local sourcing, right?
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought some balance to this, that this is all just not this doom and gloom situation. There are potentially upsides to it.
Sure.
I do think that the pending price increases of the majority of the products that our clients use in their restaurants and bars is quite daunting, though.
Yeah. For instance, I didn't know this till recently, but apparently Canada is one of the leading producers of lentils.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, I just found this out. And so I guess I never really understood what Canada did.
Lumber and Crown Royale.
Except for the syrup.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. There was a couple things we pulled from articles for this episode. And, I quoted from an article that independent restaurants and bars contribute over $900 billion to the U.S. economy and employ more than 12 million people. So these businesses are still recovering from the pandemic and inflation. So new tariffs only make their survival more difficult. So that's kind of looking at this from this is a big hurdle with the pending tariffs and price increases. I think if we make this more real for people and our listeners to know, let's call out some of the major things that are imported for all of our beloved restaurants. I'm going to skip over the first couple ones here, but let's talk about champagne or scotch from Scotland, whiskeys from Ireland, meats, fish, packaging products made in China. You name it, it is.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest ones, we're in California. We are so heavily influenced by Mexican culture, Latin American culture with our restaurants and our population in general, and which I love. It makes California so unique. But avocados, limes, and tequilas. These are big collateral damage.
I eat literally an avocado a day, most likely. So, that's a big one for me. And I've actually been affected by avocados, when I did have a restaurant, but that was because of the cartels holding us Americans hostage with our avocado usage. And so, but this is a big one, right? For us here in California, we have so much produce that's coming from Mexico and depending on the time of year. And so, yeah, that could be really huge.
So we've had, my dear friend and one of our past guests, Jordan Cressman, owning one of the largest restaurant groups in Southern California, Baja Sharky's Restaurant Group. If you want to quantify how many limes, lime juice, avocados, tequilas that are going over their bars and out of their kitchens in all of their, dozen plus restaurants, it's staggering. I read a quote from the LA Times about another operator in Southern California, Oscar Torres, the owner of Elvira's Grill. And, he quote said, all of our margaritas are made with fresh lime juice, and we go through 150 cases a week in this restaurant alone. So let's talk about a 25% tariff on products coming to his Mexican restaurant. He said if he spends $100,000 on goods, then restaurants could, for the same exact quantity and product that they ordered for $100,000, could look to be spending $125,000 if these tariffs stick and are, stick for a long time, which is a huge increase. And that's going to get passed down to the consumer. So I know you're a big proponent of prime costs, Patrick. Do you want to touch on that?
Why do you always make fun of me about prime costs?
I don't know.
It's huge.
You were very formal about it when we first started talking about it. So I have to pull your chain.
Hey, I mean, let's just be real here. I mean, I think the two biggest controllable costs in the restaurant industry are prime costs, which are costs of goods and labor. So what I see a lot is restaurants that do very well have those two, managed properly. And the restaurants that aren't doing so well typically will have those two costs really out of whack. If you are a strong operator, the two most important costs that you can really control is labor and cost of goods. And we know in California and maybe throughout the United States, labor is already higher than what we would prefer. So there's already that, right? And so cost of goods, now, if that starts getting, to the area which is labor now, how can a restaurant survive if it's spending 70+% on those two costs? It can't, right? Because there's so many other things, as you know, being a former restaurant owner. So, I think there's nothing we can do about labor. We can control our costs on our menu. And there's all these other things that we can do. But now if we have to also worry about, cost of goods getting much higher than 30%, which is, really the threshold I like to kind of not go too far above.
Which is still hard to meet in California. I'll be straight. I mean, that's tough.
Yeah. But the concepts that have been conceived with being able to hit that 30% or lower, that's a successful concept. And I think that's what we have to do now in California is think about concepts that can have a 30% or lower. And now with tariffs, that's a new challenge to try and get around if that happens, right? So,
yeah, I mean, how does that translate to one, quality, and then, if a place wants to maintain the same quality and level of service and products, they have to make quite a large increase to their menu. So consumers keep having to hear this. Oh, prices are going up. Prices are going up. Prices are going up for so many different reasons from 2020, on especially. And what's the tipping point? I always had that conundrum when I operated my own restaurants, when we just, new costs and city mandated insurance in San Francisco and all these things that were coming, seemingly out of left field that had a large impact on our expenses. We started scratching our head going, can we charge $10 for a side of French fries? Or what's the tipping point here? So I think that's something that each operator has to take into consideration with their style of concept, their style of service, and so on. If you're still putting out a good product, people will pay. I firmly believe that. But you have to have some good quality and some perceived value in that price point anyways.
Yeah, I think another really important thing is I think that the business owners that are looking at their costs daily, those are the ones that always are doing much better, right? So like, for instance, currently there is the whole situation with eggs. And, I know when I was in the restaurant business a long time ago, a case of eggs was like 20, it went up to like $30 at some point and came back down. I think cases of eggs are in the $100 plus right now.
Some of my clients are saying they're close to $150.
Yeah.
For premium.
So, what are you doing? What can you do to, offset that cost, right? Are you doing a temporary change to your menu if you're a breakfast concept, because the longer you let that go, all of a sudden you're now, affecting the rest of your business, right? So I think that you have to literally manage your menu daily during these times. And I think there's an opportunity to, offset all of this.
Some of my clients have brought up the surcharge per egg. I know we're focusing on egg, which is not necessarily, it's not a product of a tariff increase or so on. We're dealing with avian flu and so on. But it's a good example of how operators are adjusting, and there's an egg surcharge. So
yeah, you have to do it. I mean, when I was at Jamba Juice, we had a Florida freeze and all the oranges were affected. And of course, that raised the price of orange juice. And so we had this temporary orange freeze kind of surcharge to offset that for like 3 or 4 months. So if Jamba Juice and the larger chains are doing that, then you really should probably think about doing that as well. And I think if your customers don't understand, then maybe they need a little bit more transparency into all the different challenges that we're having. And you're not just doing this to get over.
yeah. And look at what I'm drinking right now. It's my Jamba Juice. How apropos. We need advertising dollars.
A little advertising. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jamba Juice, if you're listening.
Exactly. I think with all the big picture stuff, if these tariffs stick, are in effect for a long period of time, restaurants are going to figure out ways to price accordingly or find new products so they don't deal with supply chain disruptions, volatility, or uncertainty, whether they can carry or afford certain ingredients for their menu items or bar. You did bring up in the beginning some of the potentially positive sides of this, and I saw a cool term online called the locavore movement.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a funny phrase. And I was like, what is that? Someone who eats veggies or no, I'm kidding. So basically restaurants, are going to, many restaurants, I would certainly think more local or high-end restaurants are going to emphasize sourcing local ingredients, and they may see an increased demand from their consumers to be buying local. So that is one area that you pointed out that actually, could move in a positive direction.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and, whether you agree politically with what's going on or don't agree, in the end, I think that we all probably agree that buying more local is a good thing. I mean, we really shouldn't be getting our tomatoes from Mexico. We do it because we have to, because of the volume that we need. But these kinds of things are always better to buy local anyways. The other thing I want to point out is, I don't know about you, Andy, but lately I've been pretty active on certain listings that I have. And I do wonder with the volatility of the stock market, if people are looking to park their money in a good, solid business right now, because all of my fairly profitable restaurants for sale are getting a lot of activity right now. And so I do wonder if all of this actually is helping us with some of the activity that's driving the market right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. You point that out. We always, talk behind the scenes and just when we're catching up, gosh, it's been so busy, or this is a great start to the year, or last year it was such a volatile year. But we have seen quite an uptick in buyer activity. More deals are moving into contract or into escrow. And a lot of these are priced in the higher price range. So, these are cash deals and so on. So I would agree with you that buyers are out there looking to invest into something that is making money or has cash flow. And maybe it is in part due to volatility in the market. So good point. Good point. So, I guess one of the bigger questions or elephant in the room around this subject matter is, if these tariffs are in place and they're going to be there for a long time, how would government, Congress, or any state, go about trying to protect their restaurant industry from these additional taxes on their products? I don't see a clear path to that. Do you?
No. And I think personally, this is all a negotiation tactic. And, I don't think it's going to be a long-term thing. And I think for restaurant owners, and this is all my opinion, by the way, I don't have a crystal ball, but I think for restaurant owners, it really is about managing day by day right now, because, hopefully this is temporary and you can manage your way out of it.
Yeah. I tend to agree with you too. I don't think this will be around for long. And I think you're right. The restaurateur, as they do, should be looking at this more of a short-term solutions for this. That brought up another thought in my head, though, is, if with the margins of restaurants being so slim, how many months nest egg do these restaurants really keep in their operating account? You know what I mean? For really tough times. And I would say it's 3 months or less if you're lucky, right? And so...
Yeah, I don't think there's a nest egg for restaurants, right? The cash flow is, fairly low, as, unless you're well, funded and you've gone into it. I think one of the mistakes I went, and did is I, took all what I had at the time and invested it into the restaurant. I was left with, a little bit afterwards. And I had a large catering business. And so some of my money was paid to me 30 to 45 days later. And my cash flow in the beginning was really low because I was making money, but like, I had to wait for all this money to come to me later on. And so I had these times throughout the month where I had, very little, and it was very challenging. And so I think if you are in the restaurant industry or thinking about going to the restaurant industry, just make sure you do have that 3 to 6 months of working capital, because you're going to be set up for success that way.
Agreed. And given this situation with tariffs or increased costs, I don't think restaurateurs should wait to increase prices. They should be monitoring this, month by month or more frequently, actually. Don't be afraid. Don't wait too late to make that change. Well, these, more things, more piling on the restaurant industry, but I hope this doesn't last long. I want to thank everyone for listening. And, I'm going to bounce a couple questions back at Patrick here. I mean, we've been talking about favorite restaurants right now, memorable dining experiences, but what do you think, Patrick? Anything that you've tried recently that's really tickled your fancy?
Well, I'm going to go with something very current. March 17th, St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, wow.
Is not only St. Patrick's Day, which, my family and friends have always celebrated with me, but it's also my wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow. Good.
Yeah.
You guys drink Guinnesses and whiskey on your wedding anniversary? I don't get it.
Well, we've had a couple different iterations of what we do on our anniversary. We got married at Jardiniere.
Oh, wow.
And for a long time, we would celebrate our anniversary at Jardiniere until the one day when Jardiniere didn't
exist,
went away. And it was so sad. It was like one of the more saddest restaurant closures in San Francisco for me. But I'll just go with last night. We went to Joe's of Westlake, had a cocktail, and it was nice to celebrate with my wife on our 12-year anniversary.
Oh, congratulations. And you went to probably one of the highest grossing restaurants in the area, I would call. I've heard about their volume.
Strangely, they were so quiet last night, which, to be honest with you, you can go there on a Tuesday and it's just, gangbusters, right? And I guess everybody was at the pub doing the green beer thing,
There you go. I was not.
What about you, Andy?
Man, no, I had a very quiet Monday with kid stuff and dental work for my daughter. Anyways, that's here nor there. I do want to say a shout out to our listeners, because Patrick and I have been getting some inquiries here and there about maybe potential folks that want to sell their business or talk to us about that. I've also had some of my clients in passing say, hey, we really love your podcast. It's been very useful to us in their search for a new restaurant or negotiating with a landlord. I'm sending a big thanks to everyone who says that and points it out. And I'm reminding everyone, if you do have a business and you want to learn more about the potential to sell it or, get an opinion of value, we're here for you, or just to answer any questions you may have. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Anything else, Patrick?
I think that's good. What about you?
I'm good. All right, my friend. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and tune in next time to Restaurant Deal Making Exposed.
If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to worry about missing an episode, you can follow the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you found today's episode interesting or useful, please share it with someone you think would benefit and consider leaving a rating and review.
Reviews help restaurant owners or buyers just like you discover this podcast and benefit from the important topics covered in the episodes. Your opinion matters to us as a listener, so feel free to leave topic suggestions and feedback for us, as we will use these to tailor the episodes to you and help you get the most out of listening.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of Restaurant Deal Making Exposed. If you're considering selling your business and would like a free consultation, reach out to Patrick and Andy at therestaurantsalesbroker.com or visit www.therestaurantsalesbroker.com to learn more.